And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Podcast. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us for another edition. We are bringing the information of the parish to you. We're talking about politics. We're talking about community news. We're talking about sports, anything you might find interesting. And today we have the fabled Tracy Girlinghouse, parish councilman for District 7, which is in and around the Walker area. He is the chairman of the Ordinance Committee this year. Also a master plan proponent. We are going to talk a little bit about that at the end, but not too much because the master plan committee can't meet. Right now they're looking at August. So we've still got time for that, but lots going on in the Ordinance Committee, and we want to jump into that. So first and foremost, Mr. Girlinghouse, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
I love to be here. It's a good day to be in Livingston Parish. We have a little struggles going on, but that seems to be the case all the time. But, hey, we'll persevere. And I hope that everyone finally, like you said, talk about things that are interesting. I hope people find this stuff interesting, because it's important.
It is important. So, the job of the Ordinance Committee is to come up with new ideas, new ordinances to present to the parish council, things to govern. But I want to talk first, before we jump into the Ordinance Committee itself. What was it like? Because I know, we had things coming up to COVID, and then COVID broke out, and y'all only really had, I don't want to say you only had one meeting. Y'all eventually kind of got back to it, but you had one sort of distance meeting trying to get the road tax on the fall ballot, had a deadline for that. And since then, y'all have kind of gotten back into a rhythm. So talk to us about what it's like to govern during COVID-19.
Well, during phase one, like we were talking when we had the meeting that was via teleconference or however they did it, I can't remember. That was supremely difficult, and I'm not sure you can govern effectively in that manner. Yes, we had to get that done in order to get things on the ballot, so that was a time sensitive thing. Typically, I don't know if that type of meeting would be legal. Otherwise, I think the governor made an exception because, hey, we were all in a jam. Everybody, certain things had to be done. But I'm fairly certain that meeting would not have happened if it weren't for the time constraint in order to get the ruling, to get the thing passed through the council in order to put it on the ballot. But other than that, I've found that it's very legislatively, there's not much difference. I think it's moved pretty smooth for us. In the sense, on the feet on the ground, for the parish itself, it's probably a little slower. They hit some hurdles, and it might be in the sense of getting supplies to do things. There might be a delay getting things over. I know that they had, the parish took a break, right afterwards. So there was I think it was 3 weeks where they didn't do anything. And so, I believe they're still kind of, when you stop work completely for 3 weeks, it takes a long time to catch you back up on that. So I think those guys are working hard to try to get back to a norm in that sense. But it seems always to get pushed back because, cases start spiking again. And certain industries might shut down to where we can't get certain things. And there's a long supply chain of things that they need. But, as far as we are concerned, I feel like we really haven't been constricted since we re-entered phase two.
Right. So, one of the things that Mr. Girlinghouse was talking about was, when the stay-at-home order was implemented, Parish President Leighton Ricks sort of followed suit with that and shut down parish government. It was actually for roughly about 4 weeks. Yes. It came out about things reopened about a week before phase one officially began. Yeah. So getting into the Ordinance Committee itself, there was some back and forth and some politics that were played the first couple of weeks of the year. The committees were finally established after a chairman and vice chair were picked, and you were picked as the Ordinance Committee chairman. One of the things that you've done is y'all meet more regular. So tell us a little bit about, you've talked about COVID. So tell us a little bit about what your overall push was for the Ordinance Committee.
Well, I always felt that the Ordinance Committee's primary objective was, you bang out ordinances in the committee, You talk about what you want. You get the nuances correct for the council. Now, just because something goes through the ordinance committee doesn't necessarily mean that it'll pass through the council. And in certain cases, I would vote for something I'm not particularly for in the ordinance committee to move it forward. We're not the final say. We're, just because I disagree with something or agree with it. I mean, if I disagree, doesn't mean that I should stop it from going to the council. So, and I believe at certain points in the past, they were trying to use it as a way to stop it from going forward in committee. Stuff dragging on in committee is one of my pet peeves. I cannot stand that. So, and there was a couple of things when I became the chairman, and look, I'm going to tell you, I was on the finance committee for 4 years. I chaired it for 2. This is infinitely more interesting being on the ordinance committee. And being on the finance committee, I used to look over and be like, oh man, those guys, that's like having 2 council meetings, which isn't terrible, but it's a lot more back and forth, a lot more, we'll say arguing, but discussion going on. This committee has been good. And I think I didn't plan on meeting once a week. That wasn't in my plan before COVID. What I did plan on doing was meeting on a night that wasn't a council night. I believe that they would set up the meeting on the Thursday of the council meeting, and they say like, oh, we're going to come in at 5. Well, now you're up against a brick wall. Right. You can only talk for an hour at the most, and then you gotta go. Because of the time constraint you put on yourself. So I already knew I was moving that meeting to another night during the week. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to do it on Friday. And I was, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we could do it on Thursday. I had an idea. I said, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to move it to another night. And I didn't have any backlash on that. Everybody was like, yeah, I think that's a good idea. So that one move allowed us to get a lot more done, because we could talk for 3 hours if we wanted to,
right?
On one subject matter. Then after when COVID hit, we couldn't meet at all.
Right.
So I felt like there was a backlog, and there was a backlog of things that needed to be done. So I said, we're going to meet once a week until we get this through. I would like to meet once a week going forward. I would like to do that going forward, because once a week, coupled with not being backed up against a meeting, means you get a lot of stuff done. And you don't have to go, hey, I'm gonna push this off to the next meeting, and you have to worry about it taking 2 weeks. It's a week. So even if we'll talk about something, we'll make changes, and which inevitably would, and things get brought to your attention that you're not thinking of. And so, okay, we need to write that in there. And so, we hand that to the council staff. And by the way, I wanted to say, they don't get a lot of credit. They do a ton of work, the volume of stuff that we put on them. And, it's very complicated, and they have to go back and make sure there's no conflicting things when especially when you change an ordinance. You have to look at it in terms of, hey, is there any redundancy? We need to remove this, and it might be in the wrong spot. They have to dig through, and not just that ordinance, another ordinance that's kind of related to it, and remove it from that. Or we might need to make that change, or make sure that you're not conflicting, or just that you're not being redundant. Even they don't like redundancies too. So you have to do those things. They pile through all that mountain of data and find these things, and we need to change this and this while we do this. And I'm being very specific here, but it's complicated. So Miss Lauren, Miss Angie, Miss Sandy, they do an incredible job. They don't really get enough credit, and we have tasked them, because we're doing it once a week. So right. Even then, it's more than, to some degree, than the council asked for. But those two things have allowed us to move forward. I feel like, we're at a much more rapid and efficient pace. So Hope that you answer your question. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the idea was, what was the mindset? What was the mindset about moving first and foremost to a different night and then meeting every week? And I mean, there it is. You open the door for more time, and you also want to, jump on this backlog and, want to talk a little bit about that process. So opening the door with more time on a new night, we had Mr. Gary Frog Talbert yesterday on the show talking about a specific one y'all have been discussing, which is the subdivision ordinance, which will be going to the full council next Thursday. So, one of the things that he discussed was a lot of the testimony, having to gather all that data. You discussed it just now, having to get those girls in the council offices working on things like redundancies, talking to the parish council attorney, Chris Moody. So, that's a lot of stuff. So wanted to talk to you, we're going to get into some other specifics in just a second, but wanted to talk to you first about, that process. I mean, what's that like, especially as the chairman, trying to set up testimony, trying to get, public input on all this, talk to us about that process.
Well, and I meant to mention this too, but so I'm going to talk about this first. When the first meeting we had, I wanted to have a different approach in sense of how we did the Ordinance Committee. I do believe there needs to be, you have to follow, the process, the parliamentary procedure to some degree. But I also know that I didn't want to just hold back people from saying what they need to say. And so I told the guys, I said, I'm about to give you some, how I want this done. And I know it's going to sound like conflicting, I won't say orders, but just ideas. Now, I want us to be able to talk and have more of a conversation. So I don't want everything to have to filter through me, as the chairman. At the same time, I'm not going to have people talking over each other. Respect who has the floor. If it's a public community member comes to speak on something, if it's someone we bring in to speak on something specifically, like someone from like quality engineering, Jamie Seals comes in, he speaks a good bit. Derek Murphy comes in and speak. We invite them to come speak, and they do because they have specific ideas on specific things. And I don't usually give them a time constraint. I don't say, look, 3 minutes, and I don't do that to the public either, because I feel like, if someone, we haven't had a problem where someone just rambles on and on and on and on. They're up there telling us they're taking time out of their schedule to come educate us on how something works specifically. And so far, the committee has been very good. There's a lot of talking, but I don't interject myself that much. I do. A lot of times someone wants to say something, and Shane has this habit where he kind of raises his hand. I'm like, all right, I got you, Shane. Shane sits there on my left-hand side, and then you get Gary and Scooter over here, and sometimes it's hard to get a word in edgewise with Gary and Scooter.
So just to clarify real quick for the viewers, Mr. Shane Mack is from District 9, it's the Albany area, and Mr. Scooter Keene is District 3, that is North Denham Springs. We already talked about Mr. Gary Frog Talbert, District 2, which is Watson.
Yeah. So that allows that talk discussion to happen. Now, more specifically, you were asking about the subdivision. Almost there's a lot of ordinances that we're working on or have worked on relate to subdivisions, and how they're developed, how they're put forward. Look, most developers that I've spoken with, they just want the rules. They don't want the rules to change on them in midstream. They don't, and they'll all tell you that, look, I don't mind if you change something, but just don't throw it on us, But, we, in my opinion, we have to be stricter on how things are developed. We have to be smarter. We need to protect the people that live here already. That's, to me, is paramount. And you need to protect the people who are going to buy that house in that neighborhood going forward. Did you have a specific subdivision ordinance you were just speaking? No.
I mean, okay. I didn't want to get caught up in those weeds. I mean, we're more, we'll talk about some other ordinances y'all are working on, but Gary and I spent 43 minutes yesterday talking about the subdivision ordinance. So we do want to recommend to you folks, if you are looking to get into the weeds of the subdivision ordinance. Gary Frog Talbert and I discussed that yesterday. That would have been Wednesday, July 1st, for about 43 minutes. You can find it at www.livingstonparishnews.com/podcast. But want to talk more about the 32,000 feet of what it's like to be, the Ordinance Committee chair. And I mean, you can cite parts of the subdivision ordinance if you want to talk about that process. Because like you said, Jamie Seal and Derek Murphy, who come from Quality Engineering, I'm sure came to testify on behalf of some of the drainage portion of that.
Yeah. So are you speaking specifically to like the ordinance that Jamie and them come to speak on as far as the layout of where the utilities go
Sure. What I'm more so asking about is, when y'all are working through an ordinance, it's about the process, and you have to have people come testify, and that's part of the process is trying to get these people to come talk about it. So I'm more so asking you to sort of flesh out, hey, when we're discussing an ordinance, it was great to have it on another night, and it was great to have it regularly because we have more of a chance of these people who are experts who have experienced this in the field to come talk to us. So I'm talking about like when somebody like Gary or whomever, maybe it was a group effort, brought this together and said, we need to talk about our subdivision ordinance. It needs to be updated. Because one of the things that Gary talked about yesterday, which we outlined in the podcast, was that this was not just about protecting current residents. It was about protecting future residents as well and trying to deliver them a good product. It was also about protecting the parish and saving the parish money. So it's this whole deal that kind of gets fleshed out over this long process. Wanted you to talk about that process. Okay. There's a lot of things that go into it, and it's not just about y'all communicating. It's about getting ideas from outside sources, from experts. It's about dealing with those girls that work in the parish council office. Yeah. So I wanted you to talk about that and why having it on a different night and why having it more often gives you more of a chance to flesh these things out.
Oh, well, the overall aspect of it is we have a kind of relationship with these developers and these, because they'll call us and ask us, hey, occasionally they call, look, can I get a waiver on this? Typically, on the subdivisions development, I'm like, no, there's not going to be any waivers. But you do build a relationship with these guys. So, and all of them are more than willing. All you have to do is ask. I have a question about this. And typically, if I call one of them to ask a question, they'll actually volunteer to come. They'll be like, hey, do you want me to come and speak? Yes. That would be great. Right. So they come, and the education process is not just for like the public, but it's also for us. So whenever we determine, hey, this is what we can do, this is why we do it, and then you're also talking to the staff at the parish, the DPW, the engineers, the engineers of the parish have employed. And you ask those guys, they'll be like, yes, we can do this. No, we can't do that. And it's very convoluted. There's so many things, and it's trying to it's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together in the dark. It can be that complicated. So you weed through those things, and it's good that you have three other people on the committee with you, helping you. I understand this, and you kind of put it together. In that process, you find yourself coming, I agree with this, or I don't know if I necessarily agree with this in terms, but you can then go out and fill in the members of the council who aren't on the committee and say, look, this is what is going on. And look, they're going to go out there and do it themselves, but they're going to go out. But if you're standing in front of someone's teaching you or telling you how things go, then you move forward. The girls, the ladies in the office, they assemble, and a lot of times they'll tell you, hey, look, you can't do that because of this, or and they'll throw something on you that you didn't realize was, hey, wait, you can't do that. Right. So it's a process where the more you do it, the better you get. And I feel like doing it at a rapid, twice, we're doing twice as much. Sure. Minimum. Sure. And then we don't run it because sometimes this past meeting, I think, was like 45 minutes to an hour. Mm-hmm. We had a couple of items, but we've been in there 2.5 hours, right. And, but it's also very, I haven't found myself getting, bored because it's, it is good information, and the people who come to speak typically are, and look, generally the public doesn't come to speak at an ordinance committee meeting. Someone will show up every now and then, and look, and I encourage everybody to come. I mean, get involved, understand, because there's a lot of disinformation out there, a lot of disinformation out there, a lot.
He seriously looks at the camera.
I mean, and it's ridiculous, almost to the point of ridiculous how things can be misconstrued. But all in all, this ordinance committee has not only the more time and the more we work on things, I think they understand everybody's just trying to make things better. Now, how we go about that varies. I won't say wildly, but it does vary. And the longer you do this job, just being on the council, the better you get. And I think we talked about this before. When I first got on the council, I mean, none of us really, we were all green, and so you have to start fresh. Mm-hmm. The more you do it, the better you get.
Sure.
And the committee, is there room for improvement? Yeah, there's always room for improvement. But I do like this committee. I like its members. I like the mindset of, even if I don't agree, I have an open mind. And ultimately, if you can get 4 people on that committee to agree, and you hash out an ordinance or changing an ordinance, you get 4. You're 1 vote away. You only got to convince 1 person at the council to go your way, or to see it your way. Right. And you've got a law.
Yeah.
And so it's important that if you spend a little more time in the ordinance committee, just 1 person there has I don't want to do it this way. And so you either make a concession or you don't, but it seems that most people like Gary's the hardest. Gary doesn't concede a lot of stuff. He doesn't, but I've seen him give ground in order to change for the greater good, right. Or what I perceive as the greater good, and I believe that it is. And so you get and it kind of becomes infectious. I believe this is the case. I'm sorry, I touched my face. It's such a horrible habit. But
you've been watching my morning show. Clearly, it's my favorite one.
And when I walked in here, I said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go stand right there and be like,
it's hard, man. That is the hardest one.
It is hard, and whenever I first started like public speaking and things, I'm fidgety. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I would do is I would do I taught myself to do like this. If you get fidgety, just kind of put your hands on your face, and it occupies you. But now I do it. Before COVID, I would do it automatically. Right. It's not something I'm constantly making myself do. Quit fidgeting, put your hands right here. Right. But now I can't even do that. So
the hands are moving.
That's right. So now I'm just
to be fair, I'm sitting over here playing with my camera cat. So I mean, I can't say much, but it's and here I am scratching. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the hardest one. It really is, but I try.
Yeah, me too.
But anyway, that was going to be one of the following questions, but you went ahead and answered it. How did you feel about this group? Was it a good group for good ideas, but it gives you a good spread? And you've answered that question pretty well. Is that you've got a good rapport? You've got
it is. Again, it's great that all the members contribute something, but I think that one of the unspoken things that out there is that Mr. Mack, being from the east side of the parish, always brings a different perspective. And where I hate to say I'm like Gary and Scooter in this regard, where it's like,
right,
Shane always has his hands on the reins, kind of dragging it back slower again, and it's been good, because even when I start to go, come on, come on, can we just move forward? He's like, well, and Shane has this thing where he says, well, I know I don't quite understand it as much as you guys, which he totally does. That's just one of his little things where he says, he tries, I don't understand it as well as you guys. He'll say something, and just right when inside you're just getting frustrated, he'll throw something out there that you didn't think of.
Right.
And I'm like, man, that was so good.
It was so well played.
That should have been mine. That should have been mine. I should have been able to say that. And so then it lets you know, hey, look, all on the same team. And he just brought something that none of us other three thought of, and I think in his more slow, calculated approach, he has let something come to mind that all of us skipped. And I will admit it. It went, I missed it,
right.
And it missed the other guys too. So I believe that I don't know how this committee could be, any better than what it is as far as the dynamic. You don't want 4 people in there who all think the same.
Right.
Right. But at the same time, you don't want a bunch of people who absolutely will not bend. The committee is where you bend and talk and just kind of have a discussion that quite frankly, I don't think is possible at the council level.
Right.
I don't know. I can't imagine where it would be possible there, so that's where you have your discussion. And then if you can get 4 people to agree to this in principle, it's not hard to get everyone else, or at least enough people at the council level to come on board and say, I see what you're doing. And I think it's a good thing.
Right. And so, I want to clarify a point real quick before we move on into a few things y'all are working on. When you're saying you get 4 people to agree, I mean, it's been worked on, it's been discussed.
Yes.
That means that it's something that's good.
Yes.
And so when you come to the council, it's not like, well, we just got to have one more vote and we can throw this politically in somebody else.
Absolutely no. No, it is, I think we all think it's a good thing. But if you can get 4 people, and look, historically, I've probably voted against Mr. Talbert and Mr. Keene as much as I've voted with them. So it's not like we absolutely agree on everything. It's just not true. But in terms of development, or when it comes to like subdivisions or, basically everything we've discussed so far, everything we've discussed since this committee was formed, everything from, the parking lot ordinance to, the state size lots, which I think we're going to probably touch on there in a second. But,
yes.
The as-built, as we're talking with the subdivisions and Gravity 2 and 1 have kind of done their own version of that. We're going to get Gravity 5 to do something as well.
Okay. That was a question we actually had yesterday.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. I mean, Gravity 5 is mostly, I think that's 80% of my district is Gravity 5. So, I'm going to discuss with them on something that they, along those lines where they can have an as-built thing to go. Anyway, we'll get into that. But, I believe that if you can get the 4 people to agree, it's not like we went in there agreeing on it, but then you just say, hey, look, I can live with that. I think it's a good thing. And then once, and really it's like, 2 things kind of when you work against each other or you kind of take that yin yang approach. Eventually you come down. Now what their questions are going to be,
right? Before
they know what their questions are going to be, and you have an answer. It's hard to convince somebody when someone asks you a question, and you're like, well, I don't know, let me get back with you. I mean, that's a killer,
right?
Whenever you do that. But if you say, look, we discussed that and this, and then this is what we decided we're going to do with this, you kind of have more answers to the questions that they're going to have. And that's what it is. Educate your fellow council members. And it's an easier path as far as, passing legislation in that regard. So I believe that the Ordinance Committee is, very pivotal in this. And I think this group's they're doing a good job. So.
It seems like it so far, and y'all are working very hard. Real quick, wanted to say yes. And you mentioned Derek Murphy and Jamie Seal, who work for Quality Engineering. They are the engineers of record for Gravity 1. Of course, Gravity 2 is in Gary Talbert's area, but Gravity 5 is in yours. So we just wanted to be that was one of the things I asked him. He said he wasn't really sure, but now it looks like everybody's going to have their own say. Those are the 3 funded gravity drainage districts we have in Livingston Parish.
Well, and it is. And I also, I took the approach where, they did all the work. fundamentally, there's not a lot of difference between Gravity 1, Gravity 2, and Gravity 5, money-wise, but they run into the same issues we run into. So my approach was, hey, I'll go let them do all the work, and then we'll just take their finished product, tweak it a little bit, and,
Why not?
tweak it for the district, and, I've been in contact with several of the board members, and I was like, look, email it to them, and just say, look, what do you like? What do you not? What do you not like? What would you like to add? Right. Is there something that you specifically can think of? And like I've said before, I don't micromanage my board. My members of that board. I trust them. They've been in the community, as long as I have been, if not longer, and I've been here my entire life. I trust them with their with their decision making. They're going to do the right thing, what they consider to be the right thing for the parish. And as far as for Gravity 5 goes, they're going to make sure the money that they collect is spent well and in a proper manner. So, I hand it over to them, and they seem to decide this is a good idea. So, they're a little behind, mainly because, I just kind of said, well, there's no use for everybody to pay to have all this work done. Why don't they just have the work done, and we can kind of just tweak it as we go,
Right. And that seems to be, Gravity 1 seems to be on board in the same way. So now we're talking about specific ordinances and some of the things y'all are working on. Again, Gary and I talked yesterday a lot about the subdivision ordinance, but it sounded like you wanted to talk a little bit about it's something that we discussed, which was estate-sized lots and things of that nature. But after you get done with that, go ahead and roll into some of the other things y'all are discussing in Ordinance Committee.
Well, I think years ago when they passed the curb and gutter ordinance, saying if you build a neighborhood and it's so big, then you have to put curb and gutter in it. And this is just my opinion. I think they thought, well, curb and gutter looks better because it does. It looks better. It's nice and it's pretty, but what it does is it makes the developer have to spend more money on curb and gutter. The flip side of that is, in order to make more money, they have to take the same amount of land and put more houses on it. And so now I think the reaction to that, I won't say reaction, the result of curb and gutter in certain situations. And look, I'm all for curb and gutter in most situations, certain situations. But there's situations where, you could take a parcel of land, 50 acres, whatever, and they want to put a neighborhood there. And would you want 200 houses there or 75 houses there? Right. And so same land. So you got, I think what they're proposing now is 3/4 of an acre. No lot can be under 3/4 of an acre in size. So now you have a neighborhood that is bigger, more spread out, less populated. So it'd be less traffic, but you don't have to do curb and gutter. You can put just ditches in there and a 4-to-1 slope. So basically, you can mow it. The water goes in and out quickly. You can mow through the ditch, and the water will travel out faster. There's going to be less maintenance, a lot less maintenance, and in some cases, a minimum of 4-to-1 slope, which for every foot that is deep, you have to have 4 foot of width.
Right.
It'll look better. It'll be better for the overall for the parish, instead of jamming a whole bunch of houses on a little bitty neighborhood with curb and gutter. And look, curb and gutter can be problematic. If it gets clogged in there, you got to go to those washouts and you got to blast it out. You got to pull something through it. You could have an obstruction there, and with a ditch, you just reach down there and grab it. Right. And it wanted a 4-to-1 slope. It shouldn't be anything for the most part. It should just exist. So the ordinance as it is written right now, will not allow that to happen. So this is one of those things where we want to change it to where, hey, look, you can put in these bigger lots, spread that neighborhood out. There will be less traffic. And I mean, personally, I would rather own 3/4 of an acre. And I was telling them I went through the same process. I built my house in a neighborhood that was laid out in the 60s, and my neighborhood backs up to Three Lakes.
Okay.
And Three Lakes is curb and gutter. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But I built my house in the neighborhood that I grew up in. My parents' house are at the front of the neighborhood. I'm in the back. But I have an acre, almost acre and a half, a little under acre and a half, and I paid the same. Paid the same. I got the same amount of money in that lot. Now I had, once I hauled in the dirt and got the low spots filled in and everything. This was in 2009, 2008 when I started doing that. So, and it's spread out. I prefer that. Now, some people don't, but at least you give someone an option, and the option is better, I think, overall for the community, certainly in District 7, it's better for the community, it's better for drainage, and it's better for everybody. If you don't like that, some people like those, those tight neighborhoods with the curb and gutter and the pretty, and they are beautiful. And so you have an option now. Now we're just kind of open the option back up. I'd rather than put the money into the property, into the house, instead of having to do a curb or gutter when it's not necessary.
Sure.
Now some of the other stuff, we just we did the parking lot ordinance, where we essentially said that if you put a parking lot down, it doesn't necessarily have to be paved. There are certain situations where we're not going to stop people from paving their parking lot if they want to, but the problem is every time you pave something, one, there's ground that's not absorbing water anymore.
Sure,
it's not absorbing water, but the other thing is, the water's not being absorbed. It's all being channeled to a ditch. So, if you get a hard all that water is going to roll off that parking lot, that paved surface, hit that ditch, and it's going to hit. It's no absorption, and all of it's going to. There's certainly still going to be a certain amount of water to hit a ditch, and then a canal, and then a creek. But this will allow a lot more absorption. I think people have to. I come to terms with the fact that that we are a coastal parish. Mm-hmm. We are.
It's weird to say, but we are.
We are, and with that reality comes a certain amount of things you have to accept. Right. Water's not gonna. We're not sitting on a mountain and it's just going to roll off here. We're going to be affected by any disturbance in the Gulf, anything that comes through, and just being in the proximity of the Gulf, we are prone to storms that just come up on you like that. So we have to start thinking along those lines. We need to start governing along those lines. Anything we can do. Do I like a paved parking lot? Yeah, it's kind of like curb and gutter. Absolutely. And still, we still have to follow. And this is one of those things we debated through the committee. This, you have to do a compaction test. I mean, your parking lot has to be hard enough to get, emergency vehicle. If you get a fire truck in there, it has to be able to withstand that. You have to be ADA compliant. American Disabilities Act. I mean, right. You have to have a place for someone, or a wheelchair van, or to get in and out. Certainly, those were some concerns. And it was one actually I brought up. This has to happen. First of all, it wouldn't even let it happen. It would have to happen. So this federal law. Right. So but I wanted to bring that to the people's attention. But look, if you open a snowball stand, or you open a barbershop or a used car lot, I mean, it doesn't have to be paved. Right now it has to be paved. Well, not now, but now it doesn't have to be. And you let the market dictate, whether you pave it or not. If I open a store and I don't pave my parking lot, and the guy across the street puts one and he paves it, does it really matter? Well, if he thinks it does, or if it matters to someone, then he will pave his parking lot, or he will pay the price for it. Me personally, I'm going to go to the place, if I have to go, I'm going to go to the place that's on the side of the road that I'm on.
Right.
You know, or the one that I know has, you know, a good little hot plate thing or good coffee or something. You know, I'm not going to let that affect me. So I think that was a good ordinance, you know. What was the one where now we're working on one currently that says that, you know, with the advent of the Section D and the maintenance program, and I'm sure Gary talked about this at nauseum on this, what the thought process was behind that.
Oh, we talked about that 2 podcasts ago. Yeah. So that would have been the week before. If you're interested in grade D roads, we did do a story about it. We also sat down with Mr. Gary Talbot and talked about it, as you said, ad nauseam.
Real quick, you know, we wanted to create an avenue for people to, you know, you live on a street and it in no way, shape, form, or fashion could ever meet the parish standard to be overlaid. So you can't bring it, you can't bring it into the system. No, which means you can't even maintain it. Mm-hmm. We can't even go out there and it's a private road and it'll stay that way. So you have people that have been paying into this program that are getting nothing. And a lot of them just don't want, they just want somebody to come out there and throw a tractor on their road and grade it up a little bit and maybe put a little, riffraff down, fill in a hole. That's all they're asking for, right? You know, but they couldn't even get that under the current system, and I thought that was wrong, you know, and most of the people did too. So we created a subcategory. The road, unless that road meets the standard to be overlaid, it can never be overlaid. And I can promise you, most of these, there's no right of way. There's they don't have a turnaround. It can never happen.
Right.
It can never happen. So, but at the same time, we want to be able to take that road in and go over there and grade it. You know, that's part of the disinformation that comes out there. Oh, they're going to make these work. No, we're not, because you can't.
Right.
You know, now if someone comes in behind when I'm done in this office and someone else comes by and they try to do it, but they could do that whether we change this or not. You know, you can't worry about the guy who comes ahead of you or after you does what they do, because it doesn't make it any easier or harder from what we're doing today, which I feel is the right thing. Now, I say all that to get to this point what we're working on now. Part of the reason why a lot of these private roads exist is because they were once a driveway, and you have a situation where someone has, 50 acres, 150 acres or whatever, there's something large. And so they have their house in the back and they say, well, look, I want to subdivide my property for a spot for my daughter. And then they'll wind up cutting the land up for their family, whenever they pass away. Then it gets chopped up, and then these people, eventually sell their house, move away. Now you could have 30, 40 houses on a driveway. Well, it's a road at that point.
Yeah.
Now it's a road, and I'd say this to give a background. This has happened a lot in the past, and there's really nothing you can do about that now. So we have an ordinance that we're working on now that says, if you have a piece of property, a big piece of property, and you want to subdivide it to put something on it, put a house on it, like, for your daughter. At that point, your driveway, you need to surrender the servitude or, the right of way so they could do utilities later. You don't actually have to do anything different. I mean, you just have to give up that little, that area so we can make the road wider or put ditches in it later, if need be. If you only ever put one other house there, it won't even matter. Right. I mean, you'll know it's there. Your driveway's this big. You don't even have, even if you put 30 houses there and you keep it the same size, at some point though, those 30 houses are going to be like, hey, why can't we get our road into the parish system? Why can't we get it paved? Well, at this point, we have an avenue. We could still look at it and go, well, no, we'll grade it. But, you don't know what's going to happen with that road, at that driveway / road. I mean, there might be something that comes into the backside. It might, and at that point, at least the parish has the option to say, look, we can cut some ditches there. We have the right of way, to go in there. We have the servitude. We could pave that, right, if need be, because we have the room and we have the ground. Because once this person owns a house, they build this house, they get a mortgage on that house, you'll never get that lien holder to give you that land for that that servitude. They own it to the road, right, to the driveway or whatever, and they're not going to give it. But if you lay it out ahead of time, now you can. Yeah. And so we're just trying to be proactive in that regard. It's not like you're giving up anything. What you're doing is you're making it easier, and you're actually making it better for the property value further down the road be more. I mean, it helps the process along the way. So it's kind of like a preventative. It's not going to change anything that exists already, right, because what exists already exists, but it'll change the process for the people later on and make it easier. Right. So real quick, anything else y'all have in the pipeline as of right now? It's so rapid. We push things through. Let's see. We had the estate size lots. We did the as-built, and then that. I think they had one other thing that we put. No. I think we actually were caught up. I had a text last night from an email from Lauren saying that someone wanted to come speak, but it was very vague. I was like, well, what do they want to speak on? Right. And I haven't gotten a reply yet, because it was like 8:00 last night, and so I sent back to, they can come speak, certainly, but what subject matter? Because we, at least one, I'd like to know, and two, we need to know for record, right? To put it on things. But other than that, I think we're pretty good. There certainly will be things that coming forward. We kind of hit this wall where we're like, so much stuff, and we worked through it, and then it just we didn't want to tack anything else in there because we wanted to give time allotted for this, and we just kind of went all at one time. And now we're like, okay, and that's kind of where we're sitting as far as that is concerned,
Two things, just to kind of wrap up before we take about 5 minutes to talk about the master plan. Noise ordinance and solicitation ordinance. Any idea if y'all are going to try to jump on those, especially with a election season coming up, and especially with COVID being out there? You don't have to give.
No, I haven't. That's not really that was actually stuff I think that the last Ordinance Committee was tasked on a little bit. Not to say we weren't. I haven't really given it much thought, and primarily because I don't, because I live in the confines of the city limits of Walker. Those are handled by the city, so I don't really see it as an issue in the city of Walker. But I'm sure as people say, it's an issue outside that. Noise ordinance, also very hard to enforce. Because you have to be like, I forgot what the decibel rating is, and they have to come out there with a decibel meter and tell you, hey, you're breaking the ordinance. And then there's a time limit, hey, I don't know, whatever time it is, 11 o'clock, I think, during the week, but if someone brings some data to me and say, and it's, we can pass something, it has to be enforceable. Sure. Yeah. And what was the other one you said? The
noise and solicitation.
Oh, solicitation. Also something that, it's not a huge problem in the city, because the city handles up on that. Now, I've heard horror stories where people come knock on your door at 8:00 at night, wanting to, you to buy, I don't know, fill in the blank. Sure. And yeah, I mean, if that's legal per se, it doesn't need to be, but then you have to someone get out there and enforce it. But I think that's one of those situations. If it's probably a company, like ABC company, and they're doing it, they're probably not from here. Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is go out there and catch them once, catch them hard, and then they'll leave. So especially if there's a fine involved or something along those in those regards. So yeah, I don't have a problem. We can address that. I haven't had much discussion on it specifically. Mm-hmm. But hey, if you're out there and that's a problem for you, give me a call. You can call the council office. They'll get you in touch with me. You can email me. They'll give you my email, and they will certainly. I will put something together for you. We'll get somebody over there to talk on it, and we'll see if we can shape an ordinance to, at least make it better.
So before we move into the master plan real quick, y'all meet Ordinance Committee Tuesdays, 6:30?
Tuesday at 6.
At 6 at the Parish Council building. If you'd like to come comment, and again, you can contact the Parish Council office if you're looking to get on the agenda.
Yeah.
Real quick, 2-3 minutes, because it'll be the master plan is still over a month away before they can start meeting again. What are you hoping that they'll do once they get back on track?
Well, it's the master plan. If you look at it, it's very encompassing. And master plan by design, even in its name, says, "Hey, this is where we would like to be, best case scenario." So it is a lot. If you could implement everything in the master plan, 90% of the issues in this parish would be solved.
Right.
So you have to understand it is a very grand plan. I would like to see, of course, I'm still a hard advocate for zoning. Mm-hmm. To me, that and drainage are the most important things. Drainage being supremely important, but I also think the zoning will help alleviate a lot of the drainage issues. Sure. I know it will, actually. So I still push. That's still my major push. Thankfully, I got to scratch my nose. I'm sorry. It's just too much. It's too much. Too much. But I would like to see. I know that the COVID has slowed things down a lot, to a crawl in that regard. I was hoping to be further along as it pertains as to zoning, and I hate to just say, because obviously the master plan is so much more than that, but that is my focus. I have 8 fellow council members. I won't task them to one of those to pick up something else. I will certainly help them, but zoning is my primary, goal going forward with this. I talked to Mr. Burns this morning, and he's trying to get with administrations as far as the grants in order to do things. But even then, it's kind of, with Mark being out, and Mark handled the lion's share of that. So I think that those responsibilities have been passed on. So you have to figure out who, where we're going from there. And even at the state level, these grants come from the state and the federal government. They have put the brakes on. So it's hard to go out there and collect, to collect data. And it's extremely hard when the main person who was doing so, is out. Right. But we'll figure it out. I have budgeted. I made sure we got that budgeted, at least some money going toward that, and I plan on spending it. Right. We're going to spend it on, even if it's just, hey, we're getting an engineering group in to go out there and just go to each district, plot out the land, and go, this needs to be, R80, this needs to be commercial, this needs to be industrial. We get some kind of framework to go forward on, and then they can tweak it as they go along. Again, it's if it's rural, if you just don't want to change anything at all, make it rural. At least you have some kind of designation, right? And it gives you a little more control, because right now there's no control, right? You have to. Everything is hinged on an ordinance, and instead of having an overall framework, now it's just like, well, do we meet these ordinances? And it's a good way to keep it, within the lines, but at least if you put in zoning, you're just kind of, it's a little bit, it would be a lot smoother. It'd be a lot easier to say, look, and then you implement these rules to where, the development will be smarter. This should have been done 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Should have been done 20 years ago. But we're going to do it. I mean, we're going to do it. And I, when I first started talking about this, there was still people out there going, I don't. Those people don't exist anymore.
Right.
They don't. At least they don't in my district. And if they do, they're at the house and they're not talking to me. I've had an open dialogue with anybody. Call me if you are against this and tell me why. And I have yet to get one person, not one. I know that seems ridiculous, but not one person has told me I absolutely against zoning. I don't want it. Right. I think the mindset has changed, and I know it has because it makes sense. Right. This isn't the free state anymore. And we can't afford to stay we can't afford to stay in that mindset. Right. We have to change. And we will, and it'll be better.
There you go. And so just a few things. Mr. Mark Harrell was the director of Homeland Security. He is out right now. And, Mr. Gerald Burns is the chairman of the Master Plan Committee. We will be having you back when the Master Plan Committee is able to meet again and kind of talk about where it's going, because you were a big proponent of that. But again, Mr. Tracy Girlinghouse, Parish Councilman from District 7, thank you, sir, for joining us today.
I want everybody to stay safe. Clean your hands, wear your masks, and, take care of each other. Take care of the elderly in your neighborhood, or in your community. If you see somebody, even if it's small, as taking their garbage out to the road for them, just go get them, give them a call, help them. They're struggling, but I think the oldest of us are struggling the most. And, and we need to take care of our friends and family. Love one another. Love one another.
Be a good neighbor. Thank you again, sir, for joining us. We do appreciate it. One last time, my name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us again for the Livingston Parish News podcast. Please remember, we did speak to Mr. Gary Frog Talbert about some of the details that Mr. Girlinghouse and I discussed today. Want to remind folks, we are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube once a week in print on Thursdays at $7 a month. We are also online. You can find these shows, www.livingstonparishnews.com/podcast. There are audio and video versions there that you can check out, and they are free. Once again, we do hope you are safe. Wear your mask. Please be careful this 4th of July weekend. We will catch you next time.